So I grab the container of fruit, and then I will put and some hit that, and then it goes. Sometimes it's stuck in the funnel, so I kind of have to put it into the ABS pipe. And then there's a hinge that is, I don't know if you can see that.
Welcome to episode 9, season 4 of YXC Underground. I'm Eric Anderson, and welcome to Megen Olfert's home. Megen is 39 years old and lives in a condominium run by Cheshire Homes in Saskatoon, which facilitates independent living for those with disabilities. Megen was a child when she was diagnosed with cerebral palsy. It started her down a path of making Saskatoon a more accessible community, even if she didn't always know she was doing it at the time. Megen's loving family has supported her at every turn, and her father, Charles Olfert, says she is the inspiration for his work in making Saskatoon accessible to people with physical and intellectual disabilities. Charles is an architect with AODBT Architecture and Interior Design in Saskatoon. He's the O in AODBT, and he is passionate about making our community a truly accessible community. On this morning in late April, I'm with Megen and Charles, along with Megen's service dog, Q, at her condo, a condo Charles helped design. Megen is showing me how she feeds Q using a device made of ABS pipe.
But sometimes it gets stuck on the bowl, so then you have to lift.
Okay.
I didn't know about that. The bowl should just move forward a bit.
Yep, I got it.
Okay.
There you go.
Yep. And then it's every day, twice a day.
What about Q? Is he not interested?
You do it!
Oh, here he comes.
Now he's eating.
He's smelling the microphone.
You do it! Do it! Do it!
But that kind of independence is hard to find.
Yeah. So,
Megen, what is that?
Thanks to my second cousins.
Yeah.
Because I wanted a way to be able to feed my own dog without assistance. So they figured out this on their own and hope and pray that it worked. And it has been working for 10 plus years. And Q is my second dog for service work. So it's been great. Right now he's eating out of a slow eating bowl, which forces him to eat slowly, instead of gobbling it down in 1 second.
I feel like I need one of those some days, Megen.
Okay.
Megen's condo is thoughtfully designed to make life as accessible as possible for her. Charles notes that the ceiling track lifts in the bedroom and bathroom make transferring Megen from her wheelchair to the bathtub and toilet very easy. He points out the height of the counters, lower than what you might find in your own home, but the perfect height for Megen to prepare a meal or work at her computer. I've known Charles for a few years. I met him through my job at Sherbrooke Community Centre, where he has shared his architectural design knowledge for years. Spend a few minutes with Charles and you'll quickly realize how passionate he is about accessibility. But I was always curious about where that passion came from and how he's trying to influence others in Saskatoon to take accessibility seriously. When I asked Charles if he would be on the podcast, he gave an enthusiastic yes and then said, "You have to come and tour our house." That's where the story starts.
Well, you're looking at our house, and as I was saying before, it's an accessible house. And for us, I mean, I'm an architect. Accessibility isn't really a passion of mine. It's really a lifestyle. Because we have a daughter with a disability, everything that I've been doing has this sort of lens that's part of my work. And so I think for you to get a sense of what it's like to have a lifestyle that responds to accessibility, I'm going to take you through our house, because we built this 36 years ago, and our daughter was, I think, 3, and we had just realized that she was going to be using a wheelchair and had some levels of disability. So the house is accessible, and we've made a number of renovations, but you can see how convenient it is. She moved out when she was 18 because we've encouraged independence, and we'll introduce you to her later and just realize how independent she has become. But we've continued to live with the benefits that she's left us in terms of accessibility. So you come into the driveway and you can see it's all level, right? And then you roll right into the front door, and a lot of people don't notice that it's an accessible house because there's no giant ramp in front, and I didn't want this to look accessible. So everything is, you can just roll onto the deck here. When you come in the front door, you just roll right in. And so if you're moving in a fridge or a washer and dryer, or if your company has a stroller, it's no problem, right? And people don't realize how convenient that is.
Charles and his wife Leila had just designed and built their dream house when Megen was born. That house had different levels and was full of stairs. When Megen was diagnosed with cerebral palsy at 9 months, Charles and Leila knew their dream house would not work for their daughter. So Charles got to work on designing a new home, a fully accessible home, a home he and his wife have been living in for the last 36 years.
What else can I tell you about this? Mostly it's about the open space and the ability to really get around. So we have no dead ends. So when Megen was here in her wheelchair, she takes up a lot of space and blocks the area. So you got to go the other way, And here in the hallway, we've got a wraparound hallway. This is the workroom, so this is a very important space. So we used to have 4 stations, one for each of our kids and one for me and one for Leila, but now she has kind of taken over the space for the kids, so I just have a quarter left. But again, here, double doors are open, so Megen, when she's here, she can roll around, take lots of space, and it's good for us too because there's lots of room. We sometimes lay things on the floor and have projects. Okay, these are the kids' bedrooms here, so again, the turning radius so she can get around. And this was her bedroom when she lived. When Megen lived at home, she was in here. So you can see we eventually installed a ceiling track, and then this goes directly into her bathroom, which is also the public bathroom, which works really well because we have this large area for the shower, and now if we want to wash our bikes, we just roll them in here and hose them off. If you want to clean her wheelchair, it's an easy thing to do. Like, nobody ever has a roll-in shower by the back door, but we do, Let's say you have your rubber boots and you want to clean them. You can just do that. And then there's a therapy tub, which, I like when I have a cold. So it's nice. Just take advantage of all these things. And then we have artwork hanging from the wheelchair track now. So we have a moon hanging in the washroom. It's a good best place to hang a moon, don't you think? So now, as you're going out to the back door, this is something that I'll point out as a real feature. A lot of people are intrigued by the walkout basement concept. Well, we have a new idea. It's called connecting your main floor to the yard. It's very cool. It's a new thing that people don't do now. And so you can just roll directly out, and you're in the backyard. So these decks have connections that are accessible around both sides of the house, so that works pretty well. And then again, if you're rolling the barbecue, well, let's say you're taking your winter tires to the storage shed in the back, just put them in the wheelbarrow and you just roll around, everything's level. I mean, the whole story of our yard is about Megen. So you'll notice that we have a hill in here. Most people have flat yards, and you'd think that we would have a flat yard because of accessibility, but we wanted to make it as interesting for her as possible, and so we have a wheelchair accessible treehouse up here, and then there was a sand pit below which was also accessible, so the kids would play up and down with cranes and stuff. And so it was a way of getting the neighborhood kids drawn in here, and she was part of the activity, and it worked really well, so you make it interesting. But now it's since she left, it's now become a 3-bin compost. So flexible, but I can still roll my wheelbarrow right in here, fill up the dirt, and take it to the front yard where the flower pots are. So it works very well. And then the wheelchair accessible treehouse has now become a storage area for winter tires, but also very easy. So let's continue here.
Having an accessible home gave Megen a chance to host her friends and feel included in social settings.
And it felt like I'm on equal ground with the other kids. Because sometimes being disabled means you have to do things differently, even though you can do the same thing.
Megen works at Home Depot in Saskatoon's Stonebridge suburb. She has been helping customers find what they need for the past 14 years and is grateful for the opportunity Home Depot has given her. She would love to see more businesses and organizations make accessibility a priority.
We as human beings need to be more knowing about how to include other people who are disabled intellectually or physically, whether it's in a different way or because we are the same as anyone else.
Charles is on the same page as his daughter. He wants more businesses, more organizations to prioritize accessibility. One of the ways he is doing this is by showing clients the benefits of the Rick Hansen Foundation's certification course. Now, it's a way for architects to work alongside clients to ensure accessibility is done properly and is one of the many topics Charles and I covered when we finished touring the family home. We sat down inside a small, cozy structure in the backyard, and I started by asking Charles if he could take listeners back to when Megen was a child and the circumstances that led to her cerebral palsy diagnosis.
There's quite a bit of an emotional roller coaster. We didn't really know she was going to be, she had cerebral palsy is what she has. We didn't know that until she was about 9 months old, diagnosed. And it was just, her development was she couldn't sit properly. And then, we had a friend who was a doctor who said, we should check this out. And at that point, it's quite devastating. I mean, other families will realize this. And you immediately want to fix it. With cerebral palsy, for those that don't know, it's kind of like having a stroke before you were born, sort of. So it can affect anything from just a slight limp to almost being a vegetable. Like it's a full gamut, just like having a stroke. So with Megen, we didn't know quite what her capabilities were going to be. We just knew that our life was going to be very, very different. And at the time, we had just built our brand new dream architect house. Every floor, every room was on a different level. Like we had so many stairs. It was very cool. I just come to school and we built this wonderful house. And we thought, I don't think this is going to work. So then we immediately started planning something that would be at least on one level. So we knew where this was going to go. And she used a large stroller for the first few years and then got into a manual wheelchair and then a power wheelchair later on. But all of that was easily accommodated in this kind of a layout in the house. So that's been good. Things have changed too. Again, there used to be a trampoline underneath that area where the chairs are. So there's still a hole there. But we built the trampoline into the ground rather than up so that Megen could participate not on the trampoline, although she did when she was quite little. We shouldn't probably talk about that. Had lots of fun, and mostly with her uncle. But anyway, she also got to participate with that same uncle doing skiing and all kinds of things. So when she was younger, that probably others wouldn't necessarily have had an opportunity. So she got to participate in lots of things, and we tried to make it inclusive and give her the opportunity to be independent. And where are we going with this? So that's
And that was something that you touched on earlier when we were just walking around the backyard, was the importance of Megen feeling included, and like you said too with the neighborhood children, and you've got if you want to tell the story again about the accessible treehouse, but just on a bigger scale, it's about the accessibility, making it so that she could feel like every other kid in the neighborhood.
That is a really big problem. I mean, Megen aside, I think anyone that's got a disability or is using a wheelchair feels really constrained, because how many houses can you go into? You can't visit people. So we always had to have people come here, and we wanted to set it up so that could happen. But it's really unfortunate. And this is part of what we were working towards at Sherbrooke, so that even though people live in two-story homes, every house in that whole complex, 333 Living, would have the ability to accommodate a visitor in a wheelchair, whether it was one of the elders from Sherbrooke or whether it was a younger person that has a disability. To have that person be able to come into your home is really cool, and it's very, very rare, you know.
As a parent, do you remember how it felt to see kids come over and play in the treehouse, and there's a trampoline in the ground, and like what was that like as a dad?
You know, I don't remember thinking about it. It's just, you know, you're just, we ended up playing with them too, probably most of the time. That's so long ago, Eric. Man. Oh my goodness. I mean, although now we have all these other neighborhood kids, and they think sometimes they come over and ask, "Could we go into your yard?" You know, so because it is kind of unusual, and it's also really good for dogs. So Megan's dog Q will come over here, and Bryn has a dog named Ash, and it's just like a playground for pets out here. You can imagine they run up and down, go behind the hill, tear around. So it's pretty good.
Yeah, but I wonder too, like the fact that maybe it's not running like vivid memories, but maybe it's because, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it was just regular life for you guys, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. But so much of your life is planned around accessibility. Like it was to the point where, you know, your day-to-day work is kind of making things work for Megan, and then we worried that Bryn wasn't getting the same level of attention, you know, because he can do stuff in a different way. So when Megan went to Camp Easter Seal every summer, we always made that as inaccessible a holiday as we could. So we would tend to go places where we could climb on the boulders or go down rivers or something that was not really possible. And I think that was something Bryn appreciated. Well, we did too. It was just so it kind of, even when you're not with someone who is or needing help like that, it affects how you do things. You know, it's just part of your lifestyle.
I'm just trying to picture, like as a young parent, and especially with your architecture background, like was it when you're designing, you know, these spaces for Megan, Charles, was it scary for you, or was it intimidating, or did you see it as...
No, you become an advocate. I mean, it was very interesting to watch Lila's evolution. She was quite restrained. And, you know, when a parent gets to be an advocate for your child, they become quite aggressive, you know. So things were accomplished, you know, at all stages, you know, and we've got a great city for accessibility, really, compared to so many. But there was every time Megan wanted to do something, there was usually a little barrier that one of us had to get involved with. And we were part of a group called the Cerebral Palsy Association. It's a bunch of young parents who were experiencing these issues. First time Megan went to vote, couldn't get into the school, the voting door. So a lot of phoned the school board, and they wanted to, they said, well, you can go in this other door and you can roll. No, we want to go in this door. You know, so she pretty much made them fix the door. And, you know, so when she went to school at George Vanier, and they had to build a ramp. It wasn't accessible, and she went there. So that school became accessible for her. And then as we were designing, we did lots of schools for the Catholic School Division, and we were doing St. Joseph High School. And if you ever go to St. Joseph High School, it has the very best accessible washroom in the city. So there's subtle things that you don't really think about, but Megan makes that happen. And if you go to, when she did a year at university too, and so we put the very best wheelchair accessible washroom into the Thorvaldsen building. It's even got tracks in it. You won't find that. And I guess it wasn't, that's just a natural offshoot of me working and knowing that Megan's part of that. So she's had an impact in ways she didn't realize, I would say, that other people benefit from. Yeah.
So Megan gets ready for school at St. Joseph's High School, and as a dad, but then as an architect too, it's like there's an opportunity there, isn't there?
It's a big one-level school with lots of open space. Now, I won't say it's exclusive. The school board had a vision and all kinds of things, but there's subtle changes that I guess affect you, and knowing that she was going to go there. Yeah. So it's a nice. Have you been to St. Joe's School?
No, I haven't.
Oh, you should check it out.
Okay.
It's really, you come in the front door. It's very open. It's all level. It's a big open space.
Yeah. You mentioned that they're like the role a parent can play as an advocate. Is that something, Charles, that you have that you embraced right away, or was that something that you've sort of grown into as Megan's journey has gone on?
Oh, that I don't think I've really embraced it at all. I think that's become Lila's role. She's really good at this, even to the point of going to school. There was doing math. I remember this. She had to write out all of these equations. You write out these sheets and you have to put the answer down. Well, for Megen, it takes forever. Like, she doesn't write that well, and so and they did. Don't you have these things pre-printed? Well, no, that's just the way it worked. And then we found out that the other school division actually had this, but there was a bit of a process. I don't want to make anything look bad here, but she went through quite a process to make sure that these two divisions got along and the right thing got to Megan's classroom where she could do this in a more efficient way. And she doesn't let go. This is what happens to parents. So I support that process, but I'm not really the one that was the advocate. I help in other ways,
Yeah.
So I tend to look for creative solutions. So I remember when Megen wanted to go along the riverbank, my brother and I built, and my dad was quite handy at those things too. So we built this wheelchair accessible outdoor thing out of a couple of used parts and a couple of giant bicycle wheels that didn't allow anybody to go anywhere. It wasn't CSA approved by any means, but it let her get out and about. And since then, we've seen the industry respond in ways. If you go to a beach, there's often accessible wheelchairs with big wheels that people can get around in. None of that stuff was around back in the 80s. So things have really improved, maybe partly because of this kind of advocacy, and maybe because some older folks that have got disabilities are wanting to get out and about too. You participate in things. Megen used to go to birthday parties, and it was always a little tricky because you'd have to carry the wheelchair in, but they sometimes would accommodate that by going to parties at the bowling at Eastview Bowl. So Eastview is pretty good at that, and they have, maybe you've seen that for people have Sherbrooke had outings there. They've got a bowling thing that you put on your knees and you can drop the ball down, and it's quite good. So Megen tended to be the best bowler. So those kinds of things are pretty cool. I'm really off topic here in terms of advocacy, but like I say, it's a lifestyle. You don't think about these things. It's just what you do.
I'm so like you know how highly I think of you, and one of the things I really admire about you was it no. No, it's true. I think you're wonderful, and one of the things I really admire about you is just how you view things, like your perspective, your lens that you see the world through. And I'm wondering, when you were going about Saskatoon, and you walk into buildings, or you see public spaces, or you see parks, even someone's backyard, how, like, do you view it, Charles, through an accessibility lens?
Oh, especially the parks and the outdoor areas. I find that kind of frustrating because we do a lot of traveling. And I'm going to recommend, this is a good, okay. So you like podcasts, obviously. You must listen to some too. Do you know Roman Mars and the 99% Invisible podcast?
Love it.
Have you listened to Curb Cuts, episode 308?
You know the episode number.
Oh, it's the best one. It's about Ed Roberts, and it's his journey in the 60s and 70s in Berkeley going to university. And there were no curb cuts. Can you believe it? Like those things that we have on the corner of the streets, they didn't exist. Curbs were all square. And they had a guerrilla group that went out with hammers and night. It's a really cool story. So I would recommend that to all your listeners and all the other Roman Mars ones too, because they're quite interesting. So when I go around the city and watching Megen travel, because the sidewalks here are abysmal often. They're too narrow, they're too bumpy. She will typically go on the road and her dog will go on the sidewalk. And so knowing that, it's probably better to have some kind of gradation of pathways and sidewalks. The parks are really good if you can the paved pathways, but often there isn't a curb cut where the pathway hits the curb because the parks people don't connect well, I think, with the engineering infrastructure people on the roads. So I'm always looking at these things and wondering why we can't get better coordination. So there's those sorts of things. And then I know here's another advocacy one. So Megen works at Home Depot across in Stonebridge there, and she would walk home with her dog sometimes after work. So she has to go over this bridge on Clarence. And routinely that bridge would move in the wintertime and create a little crack at the end.
The bridge would move?
Well, the ground would settle.
Okay.
Pardon
Oh,
me.
I see, yeah.
Pardon me. The bridge is absolutely stable.
Okay.
Don't misunderstand me. No, that bridge is not moving.
Okay.
But the ground
Right.
outside responds a little bit to freeze thaw, and there's some movement there. And I think it's now gotten pretty stable. But for every spring, routinely, Leila would have to phone the city, and they would have to patch it and make sure that it was smooth enough for her to get over there. So those things are quite specific and very important, because it's a barrier. Like, you've got to have a smooth track. And I also, having traveled so much, we find that it's a lot easier. Like, these up and down bumpy things are really difficult in a power chair. You watch Megen go over, it's just like, well, anybody, you see them at Sherbrooke too. And in a lot of places, it's really better if you can just have some protection, but keep the pavement straight through on those blocks in the middle of the street. Like, there's so many ups and downs and rounds and about crossing streets sometimes, and it would be easier if it was just smoother and flatter. So I look at those kinds of details and kind of question why we can't do that. But I know they're all engineering standards somehow. But and then when you go into buildings often, that's where the Rick Hansen course has affected my view of these things now. I used to just wonder, well, I wonder how Megen would get in here, and then I found it quite interesting, because she loves to go to movies, and we go to theaters quite a bit, and getting in and out of theaters is kind of interesting. People tend to try and open doors for you, but they tend to get in the way when they're trying to open the door. So it's kind of fun to watch that. But the operator buttons are usually in a place that it's inconvenient to. I mean, it's fine. So you push the button, but then the door opens into you, so you can't get into the door, and that happens so often on these buildings. And I wondered why that happened, because there's. And then this Rick Hansen course has very specific guidelines about entries to buildings and how you can make them work, and we have to talk about how that is. But it's so positive. It's not a punitive thing. Like, these are the regulations. If you would like to make your building a certifiably accessible building, these are some of the positive things you can do to make that. So it encourages people to go out and be I would say positive about accessibility, as opposed to saying I just have to meet a regulation. So I don't know if you know how the LEED system works for sustainability on buildings. So back in, when did that start? Maybe in the 2000s, when there was a lot of talk about energy efficiency and sustainability and making buildings better. They had a LEED certification program about sustainability. So there was sessions around energy and insulation, and basically seeing how much daylight you get in your building, and how minimal water usage, and you got points for these different things, and then your building could become certified bronze, gold, or silver, and then it was even a platinum level, I think. But it was a way of encouraging people to take sustainability seriously in the design, and people got on board with that. And most schools in the province are required to be LEED certified now. And it's a positive thing. It's almost become part of the culture of design now, because we did so many buildings that were LEED certified that we started to naturally put in the daylight factors, and naturally put in the higher levels of insulation, and naturally put in the water saving features, and the electrical engineers would start to work with LED lights and reduce the carbon footprint, basically to meet the LEED standards. So the LEED standard became the standard for the building. So now with the Rick Hansen program, it's a little bit like that. They've got levels. I have to dig my textbook out here, but it's got ways of approaching your building. So there's how you actually get at it right from the point of view of the bus arriving, or the parking lot, or how you get from your car or the bus into the building. And people don't think about that because there's no real standard for that. And then there's the approach and what the ramps are like, and not just whether there is a ramp, but whether that ramp responds to visual cues. And it's not just about wheelchair access. It's people that have visual impairments. It even talks about anxiety issues. Like if you are approaching many public buildings, especially hospitals and things that are a little bit complex, you can develop some anxiety because you don't know where the entrance is, you don't know how to get in, and you can imagine that if you're using a mobility device, not every door is actually wheelchair accessible. Which is the one Do I park in the right place? Like, there's a lot of stuff that goes around that. And this is the first time that I was aware of that where somebody went to some trouble to put together a whole system. Not just, people tend to focus on ramps and washrooms, but that's what the building code does. But this is so much more. It even talks about signage. And signage is so confusing in so many buildings. It's got a type of signage. It requires the signage to be at a certain height so you can naturally see it in the right relationship to the doorway that it's supposed to be signage for. There's all kinds of things that seem like common sense, but tend not to happen unless you actually focus on them. And it gets complicated being an architect. You got to worry about all the engineers. There's so many building code issues, zoning issues, budgets, client program requirements. The provincial government for schools has certain square footage you have to meet on this and that. So by the time you've done all that, you're pretty much exhausted, and you kind of forget sometimes about accessibility. So it's really important to have a client kind of embrace that and say, yes, we would like to make our building meet a Rick Hansen standard. And then it becomes part of your architectural agenda. And then everyone on the team takes it seriously. And just like with the LEED certification. So you sometimes have an accessibility certification person that's part of your building team. And, I can play that role, but there's others in the province that have taken the course that can do that too. But the client has to embrace this as something we really want to do. We're working with the food bank on a new initiative now, and they've got excited about this, and I think they want to take that on as one of the many things that they're doing quite creatively.
I have so many questions about the Rick Hansen part of your education, but you just mentioned something that made me think about. You said you've got to get the client on board or get them excited. So how do you get, when you're working with a client, Charles, and they're designing or maybe redesigning a space, how do you get them excited about the Rick Hansen Foundation, the certification and just accessibility in general? How do you get them pumped up?
Well, that's a really good question. How do you do that? Because I wouldn't say I've been terribly successful. Going forward, I think it's probably got more to do with finding the right opportunity, because it's going to take a little extra money, and it's going to take a little extra space, and it's going to take a little extra time. So you do have to have a client that's maybe got that mission in mind already, that wants to provide some services. I think you might be able, with the right situation, with even an office client that wants to project the right public image too, because it does create a good image. Like, our building has a sign on it, certified gold by the Rick Hansen Foundation. That's exciting. That's cool. That's something to brag about. And there are 2 buildings in the province that have that designation right now. Actually, I think 3. The new Mosaic Stadium did that. They went through that process. And I haven't been there yet, but I'm looking forward to seeing a Rider game at some point. I'm not sure if I'm quite ready. And finding out how they did that. But there's a whole series of requirements around theater space that make things a little bit more equal for individuals that are using mobility devices or have visual impairments. So I'm expecting to find not just one row of wheelchair seats in the back corner somewhere or just in the front row, which typically happens. I expect that they're mixed around, and so that there's an opportunity to be more engaged and more normal in terms of the way things work.
It's so interesting you mentioned Mosaic, because I've been fortunate to, yes, but I've been there with some of our residents from Sherbrooke when we go for the Labor Day Classic.
How was that?
And it was amazing, because I think it's the best place to watch the game, because it's you're right on the street level, and you don't have to to
yeah, it goes down.
Yeah,
coming at grade, and then it goes down.
Yes,
and
yeah, and then the it's kind of like not a fenced off isn't the right term, but like you have your own space. Like you're not smushed into next to someone in a regular seat kind of deal. You have your own space, and I know for myself, but especially for our recreation staff and our volunteers that were helping our residents, the freedom that they felt to, like, they had space to help our residents whenever they needed was really great. And because I had season tickets at the old Taylor Field, and no, it was not an accessible. Really, it wasn't. It was built a long time ago. So I just think that's interesting that you mentioned Mosaic, but yeah, you're so right about it will take a little bit of extra money and a little bit of extra time, but in your mind, the benefits are worth it, aren't they?
Well, they are, because everyone benefits. I mean, this is the point that I was making earlier. It's not just individuals that are using a wheelchair or a mobility device. You might have a cane this week, or you might be pushing a stroller, and you need the extra space, and it's just a little bit easier for everybody when you do that. I had a thought that I was... Oh, the other buildings that are certified. Ronald McDonald House, I believe. I checked with the Rick Hansen people, is also certified. But I haven't been there since they did the addition. But you've talked to, you've been there too, right?
Yes, for the podcast. And again, it's just an amazing place.
Yeah. So maybe just from those two experiences, you can sense that there's a layer of accessibility and simplicity and universal design that goes along with a Rick Hansen certification that would be of benefit. So if I can put the plug in then for that, when I took the course, it was quite, I'd already semi-retired, so I had the time. It was a 2-week course, and it was 4 days a week, 6 hours a day. Like, it was 2 weeks of 24. They were separated by 2 weeks, but 24 hours a week times 2. So it was 48-hour commitment. It was a big deal, but so good. I mean, they put you through we put blinders on, and they give you several different kinds of canes. Like, I didn't, with visual impairment, I had no idea how complicated that was, but also some of the cool devices they have to help. Like, there's roller canes and ceramic tips and different kinds of things that I was quite engaged with this stuff. You can really see what a difference subtle design features make in a building for people that have these visual impairments. And it's not just people that are completely, you focus on somebody who's completely blind, but lots and lots of people have levels of impairment, color blindness, different kinds of things. And if they're affected by glare, they're affected by not enough contrast. And so there's ways of addressing that in a simple way. So especially for interior designers, I would really recommend interior designers take this. And the course has been condensed now, I think, for professionals. They've got a 2-week course that I think is just 8 hours each for 2 weeks. And I think it's even available online through Athabasca College. You can check. I'll give you some links for your website. But if you do take that course, then it gives you that sense of these other things, and it would make it better for everybody. I mean, who doesn't want to have a building that isn't glaring or is a little bit easier to use? And you want to make sure the signage is in the right place, and you can justify then spending a little bit more on signage with your client if you've got some backup. So this has been proven to work. They've done research on this, and it's a little bit easier to understand and navigate your building if you do this in this way. So it actually is helpful.
It's so clear that you've learned so much throughout your career. Do you think, Charles, that you would have learned all that you have in terms of accessibility in so many different ways had it not been for Megen?
Oh, for sure, Megen was the influence behind a lot of that. Yeah, I'm sure I would have gone off on some different tangent because of that. So she's had a huge influence on the way I've directed things and what I've done. Yeah.
Last question for you, because I know we're going to go see Megen in a little bit. I'm wondering, you mentioned a few times, like some stories about the community, and I don't know. I know working at Sherbrooke has certainly opened my eyes in ways that I never had before in terms of accessibility in so many different ways. I still remember vividly going along with the grade 6 IGEN class once to Broadway Avenue, and the kids were pushing each other in wheelchairs to get a sense in terms of just how bumpy the sidewalks were and stuff. And I was in a wheelchair, and they're very bumpy. Charles, how do we as a community then, how can we sort of spark that interest more and get people caring more that maybe it hasn't even crossed their minds, and they, when they view a public space, they're not looking at, is this accessible for people in a wheelchair, or people that have vision issues or hearing issues, or even, like you said, anxiety? How do we get people to care? That's a really big question, I know.
I don't know. I think just the best way is through empathy. So if people can experience it somehow, I mean, you talked about the iGen class, taking turns using wheelchairs. I remember it was kind of funny. We were at the Winnipeg Children's Museum, and they had an area in the museum where people could try out wheelchairs. So Megan's in there with her. Megan was in there with her wheelchair. It was pretty funny because the kids were pestering her like, "That's the nicest wheelchair. Why don't you get out so we can use it?" It was so funny. She's trying to explain, "Well, this is my chair." No, but it's my turn now. I want you to get out, So, so you have to have nice chairs if you're going to have that. So that was funny. No, I think it's through empathy. People, if they volunteer at Sherbrooke or get to know people that have some kind of a disability and try and walk in their shoes is really the only way to do it. You need empathy. I think just to say you should be interested, it's not really going to happen. You need to somehow experience that with a person who means something to you. So connecting people to people in Sherbrooke through your volunteers is a good way to do that. Getting school classes to experience this is good. And I think it's got to be broader, as you mentioned, visual impairments, acoustic concerns, especially anxiety issues and mental health now. We were fortunate enough to design the new mental health building at the university, and that was quite an interesting and exciting project to do. If you can't really go in because it's quite secure, but if you ever go inside that building, it is one of the nicest spaces in the entire city. Beautiful natural light, and you get views of the riverbank, and it's a calming kind of environment, and lots of special things about it. But mental health is a big issue, and the way buildings are set up can help with that. I mean, I don't know if you've heard the Roman Mars episode on how people who have hearing disabilities have to communicate with their hands. They need more space to walk beside each other because you can't talk without having room to see each other. So having wider hallways in the main corridors of buildings facilitates that. And as also with anxiety, people don't want to bump into each other. It's not just the pandemic. They want a little more space, maybe, if you're worried about that sort of thing. So especially in the main flows, there's got to be a little bit more room, I think, to accommodate some of those kinds of concerns in a more natural way. But back to your main question, I think it's through empathy. You've got to find ways to connect people to experience walking other people's shoes is the best way to do it.
You heard Charles mention the word empathy a few seconds ago. I asked Megan the same question. How do you get people to care about accessibility? And her answer is proof of just how in sync she is with her father. So Megan, the last word in this episode belongs to you.
I would say try being in a wheelchair for one day, the whole day, to know what it is like for us who are physical disabled, to know exactly what to do. Because if you're not in that situation, sometimes you don't even know, right? So you can't have to be in their shoes first in order to know what to do.
You have been listening to episode 9, season 4 of YXE Underground. My name is Eric Anderson. I host, produce, and edit this local podcast. A huge thank you to Megen Olfert and her lovely service dog Q, as well as Charles Olfert and his wife Leila for being so wonderful to work with in this episode. I learned so much from all of you, and I feel very lucky to have told this story. If you like what you just heard, feel free to give YXE Underground a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Don't forget you can hear every single episode on the website, yxeunderground.com. Follow the podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and that's where you'll find some amazing photos of Megan and Q and Charles taken by Saskatoon photographer and my friend, Ronna Andres. I want to thank Natasha Lipney at CBC Saskatchewan for the opportunity to write a story for the CBC website based on this episode. Natasha, you are an editing genius, and I really appreciate your support of the podcast and especially this episode. I also want to thank Danger Dynamite here in Saskatoon for creating and maintaining the website. And before I go, I would like to acknowledge that these interviews were gathered on Treaty 6 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis. YXE Underground is a production of the Salthammer Production Company. My name is Eric Anderson. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you soon, Saskatoon.